All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Saturday, November 23rd, and this is our immediate reaction following the Texas Longhorn Kentucky Wildcat game. Texas wins 31-14 over Kentucky. Pretty much handled them. I don't think that game was ever in doubt for a single second. I thought Texas came out fast. They looked very good on the first couple of opening drives, scored on the opening drive, and a beautiful start to the game. The offensive line, by far, I thought played their best game of the season. Quinn Ewers played well, a little banged up. We're going to talk about that ankle and what that could mean, not only in terms of what happened in this game, but also moving forward as Texas prepares for Texas A&M. And Jake, initial thoughts, feelings about that game. For me personally, I thought that it was a game in which could have very easily been like Texas 56, Kentucky 7. Like, it felt as though Texas played that style, that type of game to win by that much. But a couple of things in the first half in terms of officiating didn't go Texas's way, stalled a drive because of 3 penalties on Texas's offense that seemed like phantom calls, and then not able to hold on to the ball in the second half with fumbles for that third quarter after Quinn's injury, and unable to kind of get things going through the air game, stalled a few possessions offensively. The defense, I thought, also played lights out. They played the way that they've always played all season long. No breaking news in terms of how the defense played, but protecting the football and penalties, again, something that we have said repeatedly on this show, the only thing that can stop Texas is Texas. Kind of showed its face a little bit, but I didn't think had the biggest impact on the game today.
No, I mean, here's my first half recap. I was ready. If I was at the game, I was ready. I was ready. Yeah, Loves, they are not sponsoring the podcast. We would happily take you as a sponsor, though.
Yes.
But yeah, first half, I was ready to chuck a bottle because the officials kind of kept Kentucky in it there for a stretch. With
is it Chuck or Chunk?
Oh God, I don't want to start this. I say Chuck. I don't. Chunk just sounds wrong to me, but I think it's one of those like north-south things.
Yeah, I like chunk it, but you
versus pop.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, that's an old inside college argument on campus. That was like the number one argument on our college campus.
And so, yeah, I mean, the first half, I thought officials definitely kind of kept Kentucky in it there for a stretch. There's just a stretch of Kentucky got a big play on their scoring drive where they scored a touchdown. Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke were just held like madmen on every play. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, you had Jake Majors getting called for a pancake block as a holding. And then everything quieted down from the officials. To their credit, once we got in the second half, they just stopped calling anything.
A couple of DPIs on Kentucky that weren't called.
Yeah. On the offensive end, especially the blatant one on Wingo that was not called. But the offense, I mean, for me, this was the offensive line game. They played a good front, a very good front, really, and they completely dominated. Yeah. I mean, that last drive for me was my favorite possession of the season. 15 plays, 86 yards, 15 runs, and over 8 minutes of the clock queued up and a touchdown.
Jake, as a former offensive lineman, what did that do for you as a former offensive lineman?
I was pretty relaxed the whole game, sitting in my chair. That drive got me out of my chair. And by the way, second week in a row where things got a little closer than it felt it should have been. Obviously, the Arkansas game was closer. And then the offense just goes on a very long drive where they lean on the offensive line and they shut the game down. And that kind of stood out to me where 2 weeks in a row, the offensive line has been able to have that dominant drive. The difference, though, is against Arkansas, the offensive line was hit and miss and run blocking throughout the game. This game, they were dominant from first snap to finish. If running backs could simply hold on to the ball, if Quinn Ewers could have avoided, just all of a sudden, both QBs were dropping snaps, bobbling snaps, fumbling the ball everywhere. I was texting you #LoopGate in the third quarter because all of a sudden both teams just were fumbling all over the place.
Jake, there were 9 fumbles that were had in this game. A lot of them not forced fumbles, but 9 times a quarterback or a punt returner, hint Silas Bolden, or a Texas running back just coughed it up, or didn't catch it, or slipped through their hands, or for whatever reason, the ball just had some sort of maybe they ate some popcorn before the game. I don't know what happened, but it was sloppy.
It seems like every time Sark tries to commit to the run, he just gets punished.
Yeah.
He gets
Washington.
punished because
I go to the
fumbles.
playoff game. I go to the playoff game every single time. Like, that's the game that stands out to me the most, and this game will too. But yes, like
the Kansas State game too last year.
Kansas State, last year. But it just seems like Sark has this game plan of, let's establish our dominance, and then let's establish the run game, and then when you do, your running backs. Is this a Tashard choice issue that it falls on the running back coach?
It's hard to say that because Brooks and Bijan did not have this issue. This has been primarily a Jaden Blue thing.
Sure.
Gibson's had some fumbles. He's a true freshman. You kind of let that one slide a little bit. It's a Jaden Blue issue to me because the others were Quinn. And so, I don't think it's a choice issue, but at the same time, it is his job to fix it, because as you and I were discussing, I've seen a lot of discussion online of why is Blue even getting touches, because he has to.
Mm-hmm. He does.
You have to. First off, he's too talented.
You got 3 ball carriers.
Yes. And 2 that can really run the full offense.
Jarrett Gibson can run a short yardage down, and Jarrett Gibson, I just want to verify real quick. He had 1 carry. He had 6 yards and a fumble. The first time he touches the ball in this game, he fumbles. He's your third string running back.
And he's fumbled earlier this year,
yes,
too.
And it's not his first fumble.
Twice.
This isn't just some sort of, blip on the radar. No, this has been a pattern for a guy like Jarrett Gibson. And so, no, he's not going to get carried. So when Trey Wisner goes out of the game after carrying the ball on 26 carries for 158 yards, averaging 6 yards a pop and a touchdown, but on a 15-play drive in which he's carried the ball 10 consecutive times, Jaden Blue needs to get in there and relieve him. Like that. I'm sorry. Sark's hands are tied when it comes to the running back position.
Yeah, his hands are tied when it comes to kind of committing to the run early on. I thought he did a good job there was really only that 4th down and short where they got cute with the play action pass. I thought that should have just been a handoff up the middle. That'd be my biggest complaint of a play call in this game. And I believe that was in the first half. But you look at it, they came out in the second half, first possession, the second half, a run, and then the pass that was short of the sticks. And this was kind of the time, which we'll discuss Quinn Ewers here in a second. The second drive, incomplete pass, Jaden Blue gets a nice run, fumbles, and then the very next drive, Quinn fumbles it, and it's a touchdown for Kentucky. And then you go into the fourth quarter. They obviously had a lot less drives in the second half because they took up over half the fourth quarter on one touchdown drive. But the second half for the offense, it felt terrible, yes, but at the end of the day, they had 2 drives. They had the 3 and out to start. And then they had a fumble, a missed field goal where they did drive it down the field. And then they had a drive that took up, almost the entire fourth quarter for a touchdown.
Yeah. And it's just it felt like one of those games where a couple of things went wrong. We had a small avalanche of continual bad things, one after the other. And then the veterans on the team and the coaching staff on the team leveled it out, calmed the nerves, continued with the game, dominated at the end of the game like they were supposed to. And you win 31-14 against a team who has lost to Georgia by 1, who beat Ole Miss and lost to Tennessee by 7. Yeah, I'm okay with beating Kentucky 31-14.
Just win, baby. Just win.
Look at the games this week.
Oh, man, if Ole Miss only had Texas's easy schedule, they could have still lost to Kentucky and Florida. That's why I hate the schedule, which, by the way, Texas doesn't even have close to the weakest schedule. When you look at the college football playoff teams and you look at the strength of schedule rankings, Texas is like middle of the field.
They're 5th
in that category. Yeah.
They're fifth.
And in the meantime, you have the teams that are bitching about Texas's strength of schedule are losing to teams that are on Texas's schedule that Texas dominates. I don't care if DJ Lagway didn't play against Texas. He does not play defense.
Yeah.
DJ Lagway did not win them this game. The Florida defense stopped Ole Miss consistently. Yep. They gave up 42 points in like 2 and a fourth quarter against Texas's offense.
Right. And they also had 2 interceptions at the end of the game over Jackson Dart to win that game earlier today. So yeah, that's my whole thing is if you're an Alabama fan, you're going to complain about Texas's schedule. Yeah. Okay. You did beat Georgia. Good job. That's a great win. Sure. But you lost to Vanderbilt, a team Texas beat. If you're Tennessee, you can complain. Not really, because Arkansas on your schedule, on Texas's schedule. See, if you want to look at strength of schedule, that's fine. But I think within the conference, I think what's more important within a conference is common opponents and how you matched up against those teams consistently. Texas has beaten Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky, teams in which Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Alabama have lost to. And those are the fan bases complaining that Texas is as highly ranked as they are. So anyway, let's get back into this game.
I just want to add on to that just real quick. Not only those teams losing to them, but other teams struggling with them, whereas Texas isn't even playing their best game and still blowing them out.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, Quinn Ewers did get rolled up on his ankle late in the first half. He played the first quarter and really the majority of that second quarter going in before getting rolled up on, and then still driving the team down, getting into field goal range, and Auburn knocking the field goal in under a minute to play in that first half to make it a 24-7 game at halftime. Man, I thought Quinn looked the best he'd looked all season. I thought the offensive line had looked as good as they have all season, and I thought the defense just played the way the defense has always played this year. So I really thought that first half may have been the best stretch of football we've seen from this Texas team, maybe all season long.
Yeah, Quinn looked like Michigan Quinn, and the offensive line looked like the second half against Oklahoma, where they were just moving people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was very early on where you just watch the line of scrimmage and, you're watching if the offense is going this way, is it going that way, or is it going that way? And it was going that way.
Yeah.
Very consistently. Every single offensive lineman in this game was dominant. I thought the broadcast actually did a pretty good job of highlighting Kelvin Banks.
A lot.
Some of the really good pass pro that he was doing. Those twists and stunts are probably the hardest thing to deal with, other than obviously delayed blitzes and things like that. But as far as things you can do at the line of scrimmage, twists and stunts can be a little bit of a pain to deal with. And just Kelvin Banks using his right arm when they're doing a twist and stunt, passing his guy off, tossing him 5 yards out of the play, and then just stonewalling the defensive tackle who's twisting around to go on to Banks. I mean, he stops 2 people on that play. And that's picture perfect technique as far as using your hand to help push the guy away, but still keeping your position to catch anyone coming into your lane. That's exactly how you draw it up as an offensive line coach.
And Jake, I thought Quinn Ewers did a much better job this week stepping into the pocket. His pocket awareness was very, very good. It wasn't only just stepping into the pocket, it was also extending the play using his leg outside of the pocket. And I just thought he looked really, really comfortable today. He knew what he was doing. He liked what he saw against Kentucky's defense, and he was making really good passes. A lot of touch passes, kind of in that in-between zone between safety and linebacker, that throw to Isaiah Bond, and then the seam route to Gunnar Helm may have been his best throw of the season. I mean, that thing was sexy. I felt a certain type of way after that throw.
That or the touch pass to Bond. That's where Quinn is truly different than a lot of QBs, is with his ability to make a touch pass. Where he lacks is with velocity throws and putting zip on it.
You know who we kind of, if I were to make a pro comp to him, Chad Pennington.
Yeah, I actually think that's
it's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not an Hall of Fame all-time great, but I think Chad Pennington is a perfect example of that. He was really, really good at touch accuracy passes.
And he was getting through his progressions today in the first half. His feet didn't get, it was like the complete opposite of the Arkansas game. He would go to read 1, go to read 2. It's not open. And then he still sat in the pocket, trusted the offensive line, and then would find a guy on his 3rd or 4th look. Obviously, the second half, they just didn't really throw the ball in the second half. They only threw it a handful of times. And then I think the big question we need to discuss now is, I think we both agree he probably should have been pulled. I think the reason he wasn't pulled was he was probably telling Sark, no effing way am I going out of my last game at DKR. I don't care if I just have to hand off the ball every time. I'm not going out. And I think Sark felt they had the game in hand and wanted to just let Quinn play his last game at home. I disagree with it, but I do understand where he was coming from. But I think this is something to be worried about. I mean, that ankle's not going to get better overnight.
No, and it depends on the severity of the injury. Now, at halftime, Sark said, look, it was just a football play he got rolled up on. We're going to go out there and play football. That gives us nothing in terms of what the actual injury is. It could have been a twisted ankle that is going to swell up and hopefully be much more manageable to work on throughout the week. And it will be just a few days, maybe half the week. He should be feeling better if it's just a twisted ankle. If it's a low sprain, who knows what the actual injury is? We won't know that until later on. Haven't gotten any updates from any 24/7 or anything like that, or on Texas football or anything that would be, maybe a post-game press conference from Sark. He'll relieve that information. Who knows? Probably still need to do a lot of work on Quinn. But yeah, moving forward, Jake, I want people to realize this too, is that yes, Quinn had some really poor throws in that third quarter, especially a couple swing passes to the running backs and to the outside where he just completely missed. I think it was at 3rd and 18 where it was just a complete debacle of a throw. And then Auburn the kick was no good the moment it left his foot. And late in the third quarter, I'm not entirely sure what that down and distance was, but I think people know what throw I'm talking about. When you have a hurt foot, throwing is not just your arm. As a quarterback, it's your entire body. Your entire body has to be in sync, and it has to be in one fluid motion. And if your plantar foot hurts, or your step through foot, your drop back foot isn't working, and it's tender, and you're not putting in comfortable leaning on whatever foot it is that's hurting for Quinn, that is going to affect your throws. It just is. And so what I saw in the first half was a completely different quarterback, and it had everything to do with the injury. And yes, Sark probably, me personally, and I agree with Jake, should have sat him and put Arch Manning in for that second half, especially even to just alleviate any type of injury that could have happened further from the ankle and made it worse, because you do have a much bigger season coming up for the Texas Longhorns. But again, like Jake said, I believe entirely that it was more so a Quinn saying, I'm playing this game and you're not taking me out. And that's a tough spot for a coach to be in.
Yeah, which from a fan perspective, it is a fair criticism of Sarkisian in this game. I mean, I think he should have put Arch in. I think that is definitely objectively what he should have done. Mm-hmm. He just didn't. And at the end of the day, Texas still wins. But I just think the risk of re-injury too is just not worth it. And it'd probably be one of my biggest criticisms of Sarkisian so far this season is him making the decision to keep him in when you have A&M coming up this week. And now who knows if Quinn is going to be good enough to play, but B, if he does play, is it going to be one of those situations where you get halfway through the first quarter and go, oh crap, he can't play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Arch gets some first team reps in practice this weekend. It's going to be something we're following closely. We'll talk about it on the podcast this week because I think
is that a concern for you, Jake, in regards to Quinn's future as a football player, whether that be in college or in the NFL, is his injury history?
I mean, it has to be.
He seems fragile. And it seems though that the more he gets injured, the more hesitant he is to take a hit, and you cannot play that way.
And that's what worries me. Even if he's good to go with the foot, is he going to play like Quinn in the first half of this game, like Quinn in his best moments this season, or is he going to play like Quinn against Oklahoma? Because you can't have that against A&M. They will lose that ball game. And at the same time, is Arch going to have to make his first career road start at College Station and probably the most hostile possible environment, considering how long it's been since the game has been played and how much this game could mean for A&M if they win at Auburn tonight? Will Arch be having to walk into that environment and start or be ready to go in and play if Quinn can't play. Which I think we spent a lot of time on the offense. Probably time to move on to the defense, but we will be keeping close
The defense
eyes
isn't a
on this
story,
Quinn.
though. The defense doesn't have – I mean, you can't spend equal time offense, defense whenever all the questions happen to be revolving around your quarterback and the way the running backs carried the ball tonight.
Kentucky had some success on offense with the backup quarterback. There were some secondary busts today.
Yeah.
There were some moments where the defense didn't look as shut down. Now, all that said, Kentucky ended up with like 220 yards of offense to Texas's 450 or whatever it was. But I was pretty impressed by Cutter Boley. Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Boley.
Cutter Boley, the backup who came in. He went 10 of 18, 160 yards. As soon as he came in, all of a sudden, you could just tell when the ball was coming out of his hands. It was like a completely different quarterback.
First game that Kentucky has tied the turnover battle all season long with 2 apiece.
Now we know what happens.
Yeah. Now we know what happens. Texas did dominate in total yards, did dominate in first downs. The defense only held Kentucky to 14 first downs and 25 and a half minutes of time of possession. Jake, there's a 9-minute difference between Texas and Kentucky's time of possession. That drive was 8 minutes and 55 seconds. So on the 15-play run play drive for Texas to ice the game. So that drive, a huge difference maker in the game. Not a huge difference maker in the game. Texas probably wins regardless of that drive, but it just put the nail in the coffin.
It is worth noting Texas did have, I believe it was 9 or 10 more minutes of possession at halftime. Mm-hmm. So Kentucky had basically evened that out. But I'm glad that the time of possession ended up showing that, because that's really what it was. Because that game was put away. Kentucky was never going to score 24 points unless they got 3 defensive touchdowns and a special teams touchdown.
Yeah. Sorry. If you saw my face there making faces, I was like, how did they just end up with 21 rushing yards? There's no way. I forget sacks. I always have to throw in the sack negative rushing yards for Kentucky, which, by the way, Texas finished the game, I believe. Oh, they don't have defensive. Oh, yes, they do. Yeah, sacks. 6 sacks on the game for the Texas Longhorns. I believe going back to Florida, Arkansas, and Kentucky, I want to say that's 3 straight games with at least 5 sacks for the Texas defense.
Yeah, remember early in the season where people were freaking out because they didn't get a bunch of sacks the first few games? That's what happens when you play teams who know they're the lesser team and just want to get the ball out quick and avoid getting their quarterback hurt, which is what ULM was doing. Michigan just didn't throw the ball. And then you had UTSA and a handful of others. Yeah. That were just trying to get rid of the ball as soon as the quarterback got the ball in his hands. And then now the sacks have just come pouring in, which Trey Moore, it took him a long time to get his first sack. And even when he didn't have sacks, I thought he was playing pretty good football. But finally the sacks are starting to come in. The splash plays are coming in for him. And it looks like he's really settled into this Texas defense. And it's got to be scary as an offensive lineman going against this front because of the amount of people they're able to rotate in that can prolifically rush the passer, which is completely different from what it was a year ago. Just adding a Colin Simmons, adding a Trey Moore, being able to put Anthony Hill as a blitzer, being able to put him on the edge on 3rd down and long. It just opens up so many possibilities for this defense. And I think PK has really done a great job with not only with the secondary, but realizing the need for the pass rush, getting those guys, and then utilizing them correctly. Because he'll put Collins at the edge on early downs if they need bigger guys in to stop the run. He does a really good job of adapting based off of what down it is and how many yards it is to go for the offense.
Texas had 12 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and Jake, some Anthony Hill, 11 total tackles, 7 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. At what point are Texas fans going to just say, this guy is Derek Johnson level best defensive player that Texas may have ever seen in its entire existence and program history?
I mean, he is the best linebacker since Derek Johnson, and they've had some good ones, but he's different.
He's incredible. He's
He's a
all over
game
the place.
wrecker.
And then you add guys like Byron Sorrell. Byron Sorrell had a phenomenal game, 1 sack, 2.5 tackles for loss, 5 tackles, was third in the team in tackles. And you had here's what I love at every single level of the Texas defense: your leaders and tacklers, your linebacker, Anthony Hill with 11 total, your safety, Michael Taff with 5, your defensive end, Baron Sorrell with 5, your safety, Andrew Makuba with 5. It's across the board. It's from it in your secondary, in your linebackers, at your defensive line. You've got playmakers making plays all game long, and that is what makes this Texas defense so dangerous.
Yeah, and then you have corners who are shut down. I mean, Jahdae Barron got beat finally, the first time this
First time
season.
all year. Yeah,
he's got beat, and I don't know what he saw. I think they run a lot of match zone coverages, and I think maybe there obviously was some type of confusion because he looked like he thought he was need to go in on the slot guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had no help over the top, and that's how he got beat. But the shift in how the secondary is played from last year to this year is also part of the story of the pass rush. Just because quarterbacks, there's not people open. So even if the pass rush doesn't get there immediately, which they do sometimes, they're also getting sacks on plays where there's coverage sacks. And so when you have a Colin Simmons who can get a sack in 2.5 seconds, but then you also are getting sacks on 4-second dropbacks. It's just the defense playing complementary to each other between the 3 different levels of the defense. And that's what I've been so impressed of this season is even when they get beat, like it felt weird. I don't know about you. I was almost shocked when Kentucky scored a first half touchdown.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I'm with you. No, I'm with you. I was a little surprised. I was taken back. I was like, how did that even manage to happen? And yeah, it just I was a little taken aback.
Yeah, but the defense just continued to dominate. The offense, it's a lot of what we've seen at times this season. They looked incredible for a large section of this game. And then on the other side of things, they beat themselves in the second half with fumbles, with more fumbles. And then after that, they fumbled some more.
Yeah.
And then Quinn also, besides ankle, he just couldn't catch a snap in the second half because he bobbled it a couple times.
And that has nothing to do with your ankle. Yeah,
that has nothing to do.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, Loopgate, man. The Kentucky quarterback dropped the snap.
It was
A&M thought they had a Loopgate. I really think there was a Loopgate in Austin today.
There was something going on with the ball. I don't know what it was, but there was something. Jake, let's go ahead, finish this episode out, kind of looking around the league as to what has already happened. We got about 2 or 3 minutes left. You've got Arizona State taking care of BYU. BYU has lost 2 straight. You've got Kansas winning 3 straight ranked games against top 25 opponents in their conference and knocking off the Colorado Builders. What are they?
Buffaloes.
I'm sorry. I was all lost there for a second. Colorado, and then Indiana getting just mopped tonight or earlier today with Ohio State. So in terms of, and Ole Miss losing to Florida earlier. So those are 3 playoff teams that were in the hunt for the playoffs that their futures are now very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, you have A&M down 7-0 early as
14,
well right now.
14-0. Auburn just scored.
That had to be a pick 6. I'm pretty sure A&M had
it was a rushing touchdown.
Huh. I wonder what happened on that possession for A&M because they were going down the field. So yeah, you have A&M down early right now. That's definitely a big one to keep track of.
It was a huge touchdown. It was like a 70-yard touchdown pass. So I'm just checking my screen right now.
Yeah, I have a second monitor. If you ever see me looking over, I'm probably looking at my other monitor trying to look at scores or something. But let me ask you this. I know we're almost out of time, and we'll discuss this more next week. What do you do with Indiana? Because they're going to win their last game.
They're going to win their last game. They're not going to make the conference championship game unless Ohio State fumbles against Michigan. It's the only way they can get in. And Penn State, I think, would also have to. I'm curious with the Penn State tiebreaker situation with Indiana. But I think Penn State might have to lose a game and Ohio State both lose for Indiana, and that's not going to happen.
And Penn State's not losing their last game. They should have lost today. That was the last chance
for them
to
right.
lose.
And so I think the highest you could give Indiana, and this is dependent, Jake, for me anyway, on how the final week of the season goes and how the conference championship games go. If SMU loses to a Miami, I think that frees up maybe a spot, depending on what happens in the SEC with Texas and Alabama. I think both those teams are in. If those two teams meet up in the SEC championship, if there's another outcome, I'm curious as to what happens with the SEC. And then I think you kind of have to put Indiana at maybe an 11 at the most. At the most, if you're going to have them in, they have to be an 11 seed. If not, if they're out, I'm kind of okay with them being out because they got mopped by a team that was the only team on their schedule that had a football pulse this season.
Yeah, I mean, they had like 151 yards of offense. Almost all of that came on their first possession.
Yeah. They went down the field with ease in the first possession and scored a touchdown, and basically nothing for the rest of the game.
It was ugly. Their defense did play pretty well because there were special teams blunders in this game from Indiana, but their offense got dominated by Ohio State. Another thing that could be really interesting is I told you I look like Army is going to get blasted by Notre Dame. It's 14-7 now. Notre Dame is up, but Army's kind of settled into that game. If Army goes undefeated, I'm saying it now, we might see 2 non-power conference teams get in.
Yeah. I mean,
I think the committee would use that as a way to kick Indiana out or a Penn State out and say, we're putting in the undefeated team over you. And also we think Boise State's better.
I'm just going to have to see it play out. Because it's a crazy scenario. It's hard to think of because teams like an SMU and even Boise State at times, and even a BYU who are in power conferences, have gotten shafted by the committee. The idea of them putting in 2 G5 teams is absurd to me, no matter how good those teams are. And honestly, if Tulane puts up a better non-conference season over a K-State and an Oklahoma, which are their only 2 losses, they are playing currently the best football of any G5 team. They're just not going to get in with 2 losses. So it'll be interesting, Jake. There's a conversation to be had, and we're coming down to the wire. It's going to be very, very exciting.
12-team playoff, more games matter than ever. Yep. Exactly. My rant from the start of the year is showing up at the end of the year. And I don't know if we'll talk about it a little bit next week, but did want to mention Texas basketball took down St. Joseph's. They did win the Legends tournament. The Legends tournament.
Yeah.
And then Texas volleyball did sweep Oklahoma as well after their 3-game losing skid. They have definitely righted the ship so far.
I think they're on a 3-game winning streak now following.
Yeah, there might be 4 now.
Maybe 4 after Oklahoma. Yeah, because I know they took care of Alabama, and now they've swept OU as well. So Jake, thank you for the update on the basketball as well. I meant to throw that in at the end of the show. I totally forgot. So all right, well, that is going to do it for the immediate reaction following the Texas-Kentucky game. Again, Texas wins this one 31-14. And just an overall good performance. I'd say more than bad. There was a stretch where things weren't great, but never in doubt for a single second that Texas was going to win that game. And that's all you can ask for in November when you're the number 3 team in the country. Well, Jake, that's going to do it for our show. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on Rogue Sports Network on All in Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. Welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.